guys, it's Nancy and welcome back to the channel. I hope you're doing okay. We have made it to summer. Can you believe it? Summer 2025. I have a great recipe for you today. It's a focaccia pizza. I love focaccia bread. It's my first time making it out of a pizza. And so I wanted to bring that to you today while I enjoy these beautiful gardens on this summer day. Check it out, very easy, simple ingredients. I think you will really love it. It'll be a fun recipe for you and your family.
Okay, let's get started on our recipe. Our ingredients start with 1 teaspoon of instant yeast, the rapid rise instant yeast, and we're also going to add a cup of warm water. To that, we'll add a teaspoon of salt and a teaspoon of sugar. Give that a mix, and what you want is your yeast to kind of activate before you add your flour. So you'll see these little bubbles around my bowl here, which kind of indicates that our yeast has been activated. So I'll go ahead and add now 2 cups of all-purpose flour. So we've seasoned the flour already with the salt and sugar, so that is the only thing that we have to add is the flour directly into the bowl. We're going to give that a mix and also add a couple of teaspoons of olive oil. So one of the best aspects of focaccia bread, in my opinion, is its crispy surface. It's buttery, it's crispy, and the bread itself is nice and airy. And so the juxtaposition between the fluffy, airy bread to the exterior crust is really what makes a focaccia. And the olive oil helps with that crispy topping. So you'll see me add it quite a bit in this recipe, but it's needed. So I am using a basil flavored olive oil. So you see I added 2 tablespoons right to the top of that focaccia bread. And what I'm going to do is put it in the refrigerator to rise overnight. You could let it sit for an hour or 2, but I didn't have the time, so I just let it sit in my fridge. You see now that it's risen on me, and it looks nice and bubbly. It's already starting to kind of bubble because that yeast, of course, has been activated. And you see the pools of olive oil have kind of gathered around that surface, and that's okay. It'll melt and be just fine. So I'm going to go ahead and add some butter to my Pyrex dish here. And then we will add our dough directly into the Pyrex dish and let it sit again to rise a little bit more on us now that we've taken it out of the fridge. One thing about it is that my oven is on. It's preheated to 425, so the kitchen is a little bit warm, which will aid in rising of the dough. So I am using a basil flavored olive oil here on this recipe, and I really love it. It adds such a great taste to the olive oil. And you know, you can make your own basil flavored olive oil. Just grind it or mix it in a food processor and then sift it. So it's really great. And again, it just works so well for this recipe because, of course, basil and pizza work well together. So I'm going to add a little bit more olive oil to the top of my focaccia recipe here and just let it sit and not come to room temperature, but we do want that dough to warm up a little more because, of course, it'll aid in the rising of the dough. And then we'll get started on the ingredients for our focaccia pizza. Looks really good. So, of course, who doesn't love pizza? And, you know, the thought of adding some pizza ingredients to focaccia bread reminds you just kind of a deep dish pizza. So we're going to go ahead and add a paper towel to the top of this dough and let it rise. To get started on our sauce, I have fresh tomatoes in my pot. I'm going to give them a squeeze. I rarely buy pizza sauce because you could make it on your own pretty easy, you know. So to my pot with the tomatoes here, I've added fresh garlic and a little bit of water and given that a stir. And I've also added a squeeze of ketchup, and it will just get sweeter and sweeter on us as it cooks. And that's my pizza sauce. I also have Italian seasonings. So you could just go, the grocery store has these seasoning bottles that say Italian seasonings, and it's just, basil mixed together with thyme, and it works really well. So I added that as well, along with a little salt. And here we are. So, all right, for the pizza today, I have some pepperoni and sausage and rosemary. So I'm going to go ahead and add the rosemary and salt to my focaccia bread, because when you normally have focaccia, there's definitely rosemary on the toppings, and I thought it would be a lovely addition to my pizza. I am doing a technique that's called dimpling, and this kind of creates that airiness to your focaccia bread. And all you're doing is taking your fingers and creating little bit of dimples throughout the focaccia bread. I'm having a little too much fun here, but as you see, it creates that look that you normally would see on a focaccia bread. So just take your fingers and create the dimpling effect. And you see how that oil has pooled in those dimples? Oh my goodness, so good. That's what you want to see on a focaccia bread. So make sure that you do your dimpling. You can even see a few bubbles in that dough because that yeast is activated. And that, of course, is what creates the airiness of our bread. All right, let's get started here. I'm going to add some of that rosemary to the focaccia bread because it's delicious on something like this and is a great addition to your pizza. I also have a little bit of sea salt I'm going to add to the top. Salt is always on focaccia bread because, again, that texture is very buttery and it just adds to that wonderful, buttery, salty, crispy dough. So we're going to add maybe a half of a teaspoon of salt to the top. And now we have our pizza sauce. And the pizza sauce, again, was about a half a cup of tomatoes, a little bit of salt, maybe a fourth of a teaspoon of salt, maybe a teaspoon of oil, a few cloves of garlic, and a tablespoon of ketchup. Give that a mix, and we cook that on the stovetop for about 15 minutes, and that's all we needed to create this sauce. And of course, water. You want to add maybe a couple tablespoons of water. You can play with the consistency. I like mine a little thicker, so I didn't add a lot of water, and it worked out perfectly for the size of this pizza. So there is the recipe for the sauce. I am going to add it to my entire pizza with the exception of one small section without the sauce because I want to just try the focaccia bread on its own without pizza sauce on it. And there we have it. All right, so I have my cheese. Use whatever cheese you have. This is just a pizza cheese mix that I picked up from Kroger. Of course, again, you could use whatever you have, but you want a good melting cheese. And now I'm going to go ahead and add my pepperoni and my sausage. And I'm basically using a breakfast sausage. I had some breakfast sausage links, and it worked fine here because, of course, the sausage has the fennel to it and all of the seasonings. And so it worked out well. And they were small pieces of sausage. And this, pizza, you don't want to overcrowd it. So it worked out just fine. So you could try so many different toppings on a pizza like this. Of course, you could do just fresh tomatoes and garlic. You could also do a little bit of vegetables, bell peppers, onions. That would be delicious as well. But I'm going to share this with my husband today, and he loves him some pepperoni and sausage pizza. So I thought I'd give him a treat for lunch and make that for him. So I'll add a little bit of cheese to the top of my pizza as well. And we're going to go ahead and, like I said, preheat our oven. It's at 425. And I'm going to add a little more rosemary to the top of this pizza because it works so well. And also the Italian seasoning that I picked up from the grocery store. I always have that in my fridge because it works so well in so many recipes. And here we are. We're going to throw this into the oven. And we're going to check on it in about 15 minutes because 425 is a kind of a high temp, so you don't want to wait too long. I waited a tiny bit too long, and the pizza got just a little bit brown, but it worked out fine. You know, the taste was sensational. The crispy edges were in effect. I mean, this was so yummy. You know, this isn't something that you want to do, of course, maybe all of the time because of the prep. But wow, so nice to do this right in my kitchen. I used a toothpick to make sure that the bread was cooked all the way through. And look at that, just heavenly. This was such a delicious recipe. My husband loved it. He thought that focaccia bread was one of the best that I'd made. So I'm going to go ahead and just use my spatula here to get those edges away from my Pyrex dish so that it's easier to lift and cut using that cutting board that I have. And we're going to try a piece, and I can tell you that basil olive oil along with the rosemary and those salt crystals from that sea salt really enhance the pizza flavorings. My pizza sauce was a bit sweet, so it added more context to my pizza, and it was just so yummy. You know, this would be so fun for your family to try if you have kids because it's a process, right? So you're exercising a little bit of patience while you're waiting. But look at the size of that pizza. Look at the thickness of that focaccia bread, those crispy edges that I mentioned. This was delicious. A real treat. So I mentioned that I may have left this in the oven just a little too long, but you know, I think it's a preference thing, right? Some folks like golden brown, you know, crispy pizza, and others like kind of a softer texture, but this was perfect for me. So we're going to go ahead and, you know, it's kind of a square pizza. And so we're going to go ahead and give it a cut. It's still really warm. Unfortunately, we won't get much of a cheese pool, but what you do get is hints of that basil, garlic, rosemary, and then, of course, the saltiness of that pepperoni and that sausage. This was such a yummy recipe. You have to give this a try if you like focaccia bread. You know, why not enhance your focaccia bread with a little bit of pizza, right? I hope you give this a try. My taste here, I couldn't let those things on the cutting board sit there for too long, but what a great recipe. I hope that you give my focaccia pizza a try. Really good. I'll leave the recipe for you in the box below. All right, look at that.
What did you think about that recipe? So delicious, right? If you love cheese and fresh tomato sauce, and of course focaccia bread, it's a great recipe. Okay guys, enjoy your summer, and until the next video, take care. Bye.